Jetzt freue ich mich sehr auf das nächste Panel mit 3 tollen Frauen. Das Panel heißt Deutsch, aber mit Migrationshintergrund, mit einem großen Aber. Und es wird auch darum gehen, warum ist das ein Aber und was hat es eigentlich mit diesem Begriff auf sich, den, wie Peggy im Panel davor auch schon gesagt hat, ein Marker ist, eine Kategorie ist, die auf Menschen angewendet wird, wo Menschen mit markiert werden, die hier geboren sind oder auch nicht, bis in mehrere Generationen zurück. Und darüber wollen wir jetzt heute sprechen. Und ich begrüße ganz herzlich Clementine Evokolo Burnley, die heute dieses Panel jetzt moderieren wird. Und Thülin Dumann, herzlich willkommen. Und ich begrüße Stefanie Laya, Aukongo. Und schön, dass ihr da seid. Ich freue mich sehr und übergebe jetzt das Wort an Clementine.
Yeah. Hello. I'm so happy, delighted. I really rejoice, but at the same time, I'm a little bit nervous. I wanted to start actually in a very slow way with a lot of breaks. In order to express my thanks to the organizers, to all organizers. Yesterday, I went home and I was so lucky to have heard so many stories, to have a share of so many experiences coming from so many people. I felt richer. My emotions as well were high. I was also angry. I was touched and sad. So many emotions were mixed within my heart. And it was a long-lasting impact during the whole night. And today I'm here. I feel stronger by you all. I thank you. What I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce myself, and then I will ask Thülin and Laya to introduce themselves. And then I will say a few words about the format that we're going to use today for this panel, how we're going to do things, and what we need from you, and what we want to give you, or what we can give you. To begin with, a few words about myself. This is part of the story I would like to share with you. I migrated from Africa. This is what they say. So we're 7 billion people on this earth. This is something that has shaped me. I want to share part of my experience with you, to tell a few words about my family. I came from Cameroon, a former German colony, meaning that I came from my mother country to my fatherland. Cameroon has been existing since almost for the past 60 years. And German in this shape, double as long. So not so long ago, German was created.
Es heißt, ich habe etwas hinter mich.
So I've left something behind,
Deutschland auch.
but German too.
Also, ich bin in einer Familie
I grew up in a family
wo meine beide Eltern,
where both parents were feminists.
meine Mutter war,
My mother was a teacher.
ich blicke zurück
When I'm looking back
Elternhaus
at my family house,
und
what do I see?
Kinder, weil ich 3 Töchter,
But I'm also looking forward because I have 2 children who are German.
ich habe seit 2010 in Deutschland gewohnt,
I've been living in Germany
gearbeitet.
since 2020, and I've been
Ich schreibe, ich bin ein Mensch,
working
der
there.
schreibt. Ich
I'm
schreibe Gedichte,
writing.
Kurzgeschichten.
I'm a writer,
Ich schreibe auch einen
short
Roman.
stories, novel,
Und warum schreibe ich? Ich
poetry.
schreibe,
Why do I write?
weil mit Menschen zu kommunizieren
In order to communicate with people,
ist meine Leidenschaft, das ist mein Ding.
you need a passion, and this is a passion that I have in my heart.
Ich bin nicht dafür bezahlt.
I'm not paid for that.
Ich bin ein Mensch, der arbeitet,
I'm somebody who works
Geld zu verdienen.
in order to earn my living.
Seit 2010
Since 2010, I work and I live. I've been working and living in Berlin. And before that,
14 Jahre.
I lived in Italy for 40 years,
Ich habe auch da gearbeitet. Ich habe
and I
Italienisch gelernt.
worked there. I learned Italian there,
Davor
and before
ich in Großbritannien.
I was in Great Britain.
Da habe ich studiert
This is where I studied
Anglistik, Linguistik
English literature,
und da habe ich mir
linguistics, linguistics,
gehabt, ein europäisches Pass.
and this is something where I got something very important, European passport.
Die Grenzen
This is the kind of tank that is that you can use in order to cross borders. That is opening gates for you in order to be able to go across borders.
Also, soweit zu mich.
These are the few words about me.
Ich denke,
I think that what I've become
Einzelmensch nicht so wichtig
is not so important on a
als was
individual basis. What is more important is what we are together and what we could be as a collective body.
es heißt, eine Community
This is a community of generations, of nations,
übergreifende Gespräch.
in an intersectional context of exchange.
In sich Widerstand
And that is resistance per se. This is the embodiment of resistance.
würde ich ein paar Bilder
I would like to show you a few pictures
von Menschen
illustrating people
in Deutschland gelebt haben,
who used to live in Germany,
aus Afrika.
who came from Africa.
Dieser Mann
This man in a Prussian uniform, 1900,
der andere
and the other one
Deutschland gestorben
who
aus Kamerun.
died in Germany, who was coming from Cameroon,
Sein Name falsch
and they actually spelled his name in a wrong way.
Das heißt, wir sind hier
What does it mean?
seit
We have been here for quite sometimes. And what has changed in the meantime?
Also, ich gebe das Wort
I would like to pass on the microphone to Laya, simply because I have this PowerPoint and this is going to support her a little bit. Laya Okongo. Thank you very much, Clementine. I would like to start this panel with a poem, which is a kind of illustration of my story. As I came to Germany, my whole body was stitched with shrapnels, hundreds of them, like many thorns. As I came to Germany, it was not clear whether the waters that surrounded me were more secure than whatever the future was made of. As I came to Germany, childhood was not painted orange, yellow, or purple, but it was dressed in navy camouflage and in medical white. As I came to Germany, I carried a full load of coloniality in my luggage and hidden black knowledge that my ancestors digged piece by piece out of my heart. As I came to Germany, the medical doctors, specialists were not certain that I had already not lived enough and that nothing more was to be expected. As I came to Germany, I was closer to death than to life. As I came to Germany, I was in the womb of my mother. I had experienced so more that only singing, dancing, creative writing, photography could heal my soul. As I came to Germany, I was in my mother's womb. As I came to Germany, some months after the Kasinga attack, 1978, as I came to Germany, my soul rejoiced at exchanges like this today.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. I would like to express all my thanks to all those who invited me, just in case I would forget it later. Thank you to you, Clementine. I'm so happy to be here today and to be able to share my story with you. Each story should be told. Each story has a particular touch. I find it so fantastic that we have come together today. And what I wish from you, if I may, our sisters, I wish from you that you show your emotion, that you pour out your feelings. This is what I've experienced. When I find yourself at any time, let's be emotional. Let our feelings and emotion be poured. Let's all this be our strength. What is about my stories? It begins 1978. My story probably began before. I'm a child. I'm the child of parents that fought for independence. I will try to slow down. I will really try my best to slow down. I'm the child that was born 1978, and my parents were freedom fighters. They fought for independence. And immediately after this attack of Kasenga, I was, my mother, some people shot down at my mother And I was, as I said, in the womb of my mother. And she belonged to the few people who survived this attack. There were more than 2,000 people who passed away, and they belonged to the first group that could actually immigrate. And they came to East Germany, and I've been socialized in East Germany. And I came in a country that only wanted that people who fought for independence would receive support, and that Namibia wanted to free itself from this white racist colonial system. And this is the beginning. My mother belongs to the first 20 who came. She was young, she was 16 years old. And she had experienced so many traumatic experiences, so much camouflage, so much blood, that she didn't know what she should do with her child. And was born here in a country that was, to begin with, a safe place at the beginning. And despite all this, it was clear that something is not completely safe in this surrounding. I lived in a white family in East Germany, where there was no black child in the surrounding. I only knew the existence of black children through songs that I don't want to repeat here. What is it? Namibian, German, what is that? And there was only a women's newspaper in the East Germany where there was a portraying, featuring a black child and a black woman, and that was the story of my mom and mine. And it looks very romantic and beautiful, but this story should be told so that the state could experience that a woman who live here, who has nothing to do here. I lived so many years without a passport, and after reunification, I received a Namibian and then a German passport, and I was asking myself all the time who I am. I have not supposed I'm not entitled to be here, so who I am, where do I belong to? And though I lived in a very loving family, it was always the case. I had always a feeling in myself, the feeling to be here was full of question marks. Who I am, why should I be? And maybe I should, you have many questions, as I should stop talking now.
Danke sehr. Also, ich würde eine Frage später haben. Aber jetzt möchte ich...
Thank you very much, and I'm going to ask you a question later, but I would now like to thank Tulin for her patience, and I also have a question for her. Basically, I would like to ask her to introduce herself. I really feel with the interpreters, because for many, many years I myself was an interpreter, and the interpreters are doing really wonderful work. It's really impressive. It's absolutely impressive to interpret simultaneously. It's one of the most difficult tasks, and I'm talking of experience. I'll try to speak slowly. When I was asked to take part at this conference, at that time I was in Colombia. I was invited to a series of presentations and various events. It was very interesting. Why? Because all of a sudden, I was in a context where being German and coming from German was a topic. And I looked up in my calendar, my schedule, and agreed to come to this conference because I really appreciate the work of International Women's Space, and I also like to support them. When you guys registered, you all received a folder. And in this folder, you see also a short bio of us. I don't want to introduce myself at length and talk about my profession because that is secondary really today. Now, today, it's probably also the very first time that I am going to introduce myself in a personal way because I always felt like personal stories are absolutely important. However, in my political work, I somewhat always looked for the common denominator and tried not to do things just because I personally was affected by them, but I tried to fight for different struggles, for different perspectives. Therefore, it never played a role where somebody is coming from which country, what is the background, what kind of passport that that person holds. However, I think it's important to explain to you a little bit and thus tell you a little bit about my life. I was born in Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia, in a small town called Siegen. I was born in 1978, just like Stephanie. I grew up in Germany. I grew up in Germany until the 1980s. My parents were a little bit, or they felt a little bit unsafe, given the many racist attacks that happened at that time. And they asked themselves, is that a really good idea to stay in Germany with their children? This panel title is called German, but with a migration background. I did not come to Germany. It's my parents who came to Germany, and they came here in 1963. My father came first. He followed his dream. He wanted to study mechanical engineering. That was his dream. So he came to Germany. And he used this recruitment agreement that existed between Germany and Turkey to come to Germany and study and also work. He had to learn very fast German because he wanted to study. So given that he learned German so quickly, he became one of the first interpreters and translators for Turkish German and also Arabic German. Why Arabic? As I said, I have Turkish parents. But my parents are not ethnically Turkish. They come from a city at the border of Syria called Antiochia. And they both speak Arabic as their mother tongue. They don't also belong to the majority confession, religion. When it comes to their ethnic orientation and religious orientation, they are a minority. However, that did not play a role when my father migrated to Germany. Nevertheless, when we grew up, it played a role, a big role. Now, in the late 1980s, my parents had the idea to leave. They wanted to go back to Turkey. And they kept to their plan without, however, not wholeheartedly. Somewhat they wanted to stay, but they felt very unsafe, especially in North Rhine-Westphalia. As many of you know, the atmosphere and the climate there was not very good. We were children and we experienced that only a little bit, but we experienced these kind of labeling that we got from others, that we are not really Germans. So that kind of labeling and marking played a huge role for me and my siblings. Our upgrowing and was actually quite conventional. We went to kindergarten, then we went to primary school, we were in a sports association. However, there is always a certain type of perception in kindergarten and also in primary school. Me and my siblings were the only ones who were not German. When I came to Turkey, I was again socialized, and I'm not going to talk about it too much. The most part of my life I spent in Istanbul, and I studied in Istanbul as well. I also became politically active in Istanbul. Many years later, and that's about 15 years ago, I came to Berlin, and I've been living in Berlin ever since. So in Turkey, the people there perceive me as somebody from Germany, a so-called Almancı. And here in Germany, there are different ascription and perceptions with regard to my personality. And of course, I also experience forms of exclusion, and which is also our topic today. I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I am also looking forward to your contributions and also questions. We also earlier talked about how to conduct this session, and I give now the floor to Clementine because she had some kind of suggestion how to conduct this session.
Danke sehr.
Thank you very much. So this will be the first round, that is, we are starting now. And the question is all about to be German. But. And this is this but that is always following when the belonging to the fact that people belong or not to this being German is questioned. So during this, you experience this kind of constant shift between Germany and Turkey, and that was the same for me. This situation of being in the middle, in between, being in between Germany and Cameroon. Actually, I'm the first generation, and my daughters are the second generation. And there is a reason why we talk yet now at this place about being German, even if we do not want to put forward this issue of migrant background? Why do we talking about it? We want to share our experiences, and these experiences diverse. We have different channels, and people are also under the influence of this issue of identity and identification. So what would be my first question? According to your perspective, why do we talk at all about being German?
Warum wir hier
Why do we talk today about being German? There's one aspect of the issue, but I understand your question in different way. Why do we talk at all at the moment in society about being German? What does it mean? I'm asking myself, I'm wondering all the time. Honestly, I don't really like to talk about it, but we have to deal with this issue in a political context. We're talking about this year, 2017. Maybe we will be facing a new wave of people, new wave of migration. So part of this environment is going to mix up. We talk about the story of migration, which has been addressed in a different ways many times. For instance, we talk about the relationships between Turkey and Germany. These are 50 years long generations. You looked a little bit farther in the past, and there are some roles that have been attributed. Things have been explained or not. But since 2000, it is a discourse that I cannot follow any longer because I don't see the meaning in it. German identity, yes, if we can talk about it, is being transforming itself. There are waves of migrants that came to Germany or to Europe, meaning that really everything is completely different. Not only because a migrant woman is a migrant woman. There's some explanation that has to be given. Is it just this person just arrived now? Is this person educated? There are so many new characteristics, many attributions, and all these attributions come from the mainstream society. Sometimes you have people who come and they are checked on their education status, whether they have a university title, whether they are artists or whatever, what kind of competences they have. And they say, okay, I'm a migrant, I'm a refugee that just arrived, but I'm different from the others. So there's a process of marginalization. And this is what is going on in mainstream society. And this is kind of competition that is developed among them, all migrants within the migrant communities. Now, so people say now you have the new Germans, we have the new arrived refugees. We can have their nice photography with with Chancellor Angela Merkel. So there's a multifaceted phenomena. This is an instrumentalization of our story. We took. I use the word "we" as the people who convened here. This is a way to take ownership of our stories. Because the mainstream society is setting goals, and we don't want to reach the goals that have been attributed to us. We have completely different goals. We have a completely different understanding, and we have completely different experience. And this is a new debate that is at the core of this issue of being German. The people who have just who arrived, I'm not going to put myself in front of them and say, I'm a German, I was born here, I have a German passport. No. Even if our stories are different, I'm still as less German as they may be. And both of us will not going to arrive wherever people will want to push us to. There is a way. We have to forge alliances among us, ourselves, not against artificially created enemies. We want to live in dignity, and that is the thing we want all. We want to enjoy respect, and we want as well not to be attacked on a daily basis. We don't want to experience discrimination against us on a day-to-day basis. This is why we want to develop a new ways of understanding what could be this being German. And when we talk about it today, it's good to always add this but and to stress it. And this is under this umbrella of this but that we can converge. Because on the way towards this conference, I have always thought about all these attributions. On the one hand, you have all the concepts that are coined, maybe Germans. I have also a German passport, and was born here biological German, as they say. And there is a kind of marginalization process that is taking place because the people who were not German are, so to say, less German. That is part of the stories I may tell later, because I'm also second generation. These attribution of being German with a migrant background. These are not attributions that are not reflecting the variety of experiences that we have. Some people say you are a German Turkish woman, but I'm not Turkish German. I'm neither Turkish German nor Turkish Arab. I'm a German, maybe Turkish person. So there are attributions that we do not favor. So often in my life, after interviews or during presentations, I had to correct it when I was presented in a way that didn't represent me. Tumen Doman, German Turkish from Berlin. But this is not who I am. But all these attributions are also concept that people find it positive because it means that they have, so to say, arrived here. For instance, New German, but it is always connected to a political position. It was never my aim I happen to be born, to have been born here, and I have to face all these set of questions about where I originally coming from, and this is what I said at the beginning. And this is very funny in abroad. When I'm in Colombia, I said I come from Germany. People say never, and that is very funny. But it's in this concept a little bit easier to accept that. But here in this country, to have to answer these questions every time, and it's really a burden that you have to carry. And this is why such a surrounding and such a context, such an environment is very important, because these issues do not play a role. I can see all their faces, and it's not important to know from which regions, from which country people are coming, which kind of passports the people are holding. Either we have a common aim, a common struggle, or we don't have. But I will never confront somebody with these kind of issues. Stories have been told coming from the bottom of your heart, like the way you tell your stories and use poetry. Before I will stop there. Here, me in the Western countries, me in Eastern countries, which kind of foreign attributions we have been confronted with. Maybe you have interesting anecdotes you want to share with us.
The question of being German and German in general, this is a more complex issue, I must say. For me personally, it's a question about humanity, human dignity, basic needs. And at the end of the day, for me, it is a privilege that I have. I have the German passport, and I see it as a privilege, and I use my privileges by opening my mouth, by meeting other people, by listening to stories, and I also use my art to tell stories and open up the realities that I experience, and I am an intersectional person. Now, when it comes to my Germanness, I must say that I had to inhale the wide history, this very blurred history, the history of domination, where to go to holidays, how to speak about things, how stories are being told, and who has a voice and who's not. And I try within my capacity to be here and to be present and ask questions. Having been socialized in Germany, it is a privilege, and it is a privilege that I use to ask questions and to ask people, what are you talking about? And find out about their realities. If you look around the globe, or if you look at the globe, do we see borders? Do we see things belonging to a specific person? Therefore, for me, I see it as a political instrument for allowing people to be somewhere or not. However, at the same time, I wish that we would allow for expressing humanity and meeting each other, and that should be our political objective. I see it as a privilege for us to be here and to meet each other here and to also open our mouth if we can. A privilege to be here in a country where we have the right to assemble, the right to express ourselves. And the people who enjoy this privilege should use that privilege. If I speak about these artificial borderlines and talk about that, then this is really my German privilege, which I use to speak out against these things.
Da möchte ich dann zurückgehen an dich.
Tulin, I have a question to you with regard to how do you see yourself, how do you identify yourself, and how do others see you? And what kind of attributions does the society and other people place on you? And this is an element that I found very important. So Tulin, this is a question to you. And to you, Laya, when it comes to national belongingness, if we see it as an instrument, what can we use it for in order to reach our objective? So please, would you like to elaborate on these two issues? Well, it is quite amusing, and we can exchange maybe these different attributions that we find ourselves ascribed with. I can maybe mention just a few. For example, according to our look, we are then put in connection with with a certain ethnic background. We in Germany have a big Turkish population, and therefore often people then perceive you as being Turkish, as speaking Turkish as well, or being able to speak Turkish. And sometimes we also have positive attributions, and some people see me as a Spanish person. And if I tell them that I'm not, and then I can see some kind of disappointment on their face. So we continuously are faced with these kind of ascriptions and just attributions. You are a person in the society, and then you find yourself being put in sort of like these pigeonholes. With a new history, then it's other attributions come along as well, as being Muslim, as being religious. You are considered to be a Muslim, and the rest is just considered as being interesting. So, for example, if they assume you to be a Muslim and then you tell them that, no, I don't even believe in God, and then these people are surprised. Of course, it always depends on the context. For example, you are also seen as an oppressed woman who is being beaten by the elder siblings or other family members. You are not emancipated. This is yet again another attribution, depending on age. For example, people often say, I'm younger than I actually am. People who look like me are not necessarily associated with people that are emancipated. So people then try to talk about stories of the previous feminist history, and I don't necessarily need their stories. I have my own story, and I also know the story of other women. So when people start talking about these things, I often try to move away, really. And when it comes to a discussion, I can also be quite provocative, really. And I can also kind of like exaggerate things or put them at the level where it can get quite hot, really. There's yet another assumption that a person who look like me is often assumed as not speaking German, not intelligent enough, that I can't speak properly, and then people speak slowly. I don't have nothing to do. I don't mind if people speak slowly, but yet sometimes I feel that they do it on purpose because they think maybe that I don't understand them properly. And also what happens is that attributions are made with regard to my parents. And when it comes to society, it's also then the status that plays a role, not only the status that you have been bestowed with through your passport, but also whether you are employed or what you do as your profession. And often people think that you are lower, really. They don't necessarily ascribe to you as a person who has a high professional status, for example. For me, it's very tedious and almost pointless to try to correct people if they make these wrong assumptions and attributions, because it's really useless, and it's not my task really to inform the entire German people, really. What, however, we can do, we can forge alliances, we can conduct demonstrations, we can also publish academic works on that topic. We are now living in a technological era where everything is accessible in terms of information. We have the internet that provides information. And I think certain individuals, they show a high level of arrogance if they believe that others are there to educate them. Because I don't see it as my task to inform Germans about their migration or immigration history. Either they have an interest in finding out, or they don't have. Because those who are not interested in finding out, they have a completely different position in society. And these are also not the people that we are working together. There are certain people who really want to understand things. They want to find out about differences. There are people who know about a Turkish migration. They don't, however, know the internal relations. And if I try to tell them how ethnically Turkey is, the language that are spoken there, the religion that exists in Turkey, then this is absolutely something else than this expectation that we have to tell our story so that some people here, some individuals become more sensitive. But I must say that it is our life, and it is absolutely painstaking, painful to spend our lives doing all these.
You know, the way third parties are perceiving us. Where do you actually coming from? Or the question whether we do not know all of us. If I don't know this person that is coming from somewhere, and this country, Africa, very often I'm kind of place where all the projections of these exotic perceptions are reproduced. And sometimes I'm asking myself, what is all about? Why, when am I really arrived in this white society? Oh, yes. Oh, you were born here. Oh, you were socialized here. Oh, you went to school here. Oh, you speak German without any accent, or maybe with the accent from Berlin. And the issue of what does it mean to have gone on professional training, gone to school? Is it not enough because of power structures, because of all these radical structures to be radicalized, to be maybe as well criminalized? Can I benefit from the system? Yes. But it's still not a reason to have these attributions. If I'm allowed to have my own perception of myself, it means that I'm an artist. I use this artistic expression to act in a political way. And at the same time, I'm a person who is a black person, a person of color, a black person of color who has undergone all this traumatic experience, who has another ability. And because of all this traumatic experience, I'm also moving in this neurodiverse context. My body doesn't conform to these norms established by society. Yes, and I'm still myself. I move in an academic context that is also part of my privileges, even if I've never attended university courses. They didn't actually want to see me there, but I was still there. And these are all the definitions. And where do we move? Where are the points of connections in between us? My black ancestors are part of my identity. They are actually living within me. And we may be completely different, but all this is part of my identity. And this is where this is my source of aspiration, and I cannot accept any other attribution because it's not me. Then I want to talk about this power of definition, because it's part of this structural systemic architecture during centuries. 1,000 years is part of these constructs. And what is this construct? This single story, so to say. This is really fixed boundary established between people. These artificial borders and boundaries anchored, deeply rooted in our mind, and we have been manipulated through this construct. In Germany, I was duly in the Jewish museum when I could read there that Jewish people have been here in Germany for the past 1,000 years. And they are still struggling to belong to. These constructs, they are directed against us. And I think that we should not reinforce them, So should not to just be focused on being German. As I came to Germany, I was already somebody who was entitled to go wherever I wanted to go. I'm asking myself all the time, to be German, why does it mean that you should not be a migrant? That is, something is being valued. It's good to stay somewhere. It's not good to move somewhere, to migrate anywhere else. If I have power, then I travel. I don't migrate. I just travel. That meaning that we should always travel wherever we want to go. That is the implication of this. And I think it's very important to develop new concepts of citizenship. Using a pluralistic orientation. Because I identify myself with being German, it doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm not going back to Cameroon and identify myself as a Cameroonian. So we have always these dual perspectives. It's better to be a European, of course, as to be an African. This is what the understanding of it. Per se, this dichotomy, this division is within ourselves, and this is a violent division that is within ourselves. Very often, when people desperately want to be German, they want simply safety. They want to feel safe. This is what it actually means, and it is a normal thing. We always, and each of us, want to be part of this big universal cake. But I want to say straight, the people who are not here, 700 million are on the African continent. This doesn't mean that these people are there and they are marginalized and they are not part of this big picture that we have. And I wanted to introduce this aspect in our conversation. We should not have in mind this Germany as a state, as a nation, as lost focus of these people who are not part of this big picture. They experience a structural state of emergency, violence, and the power of the German state is also targeted against these people. If I would experience Cameroon safety in Cameroon, I would not be here. I'm here because 1980, the World Bank had initiated an economic crisis in Africa. And it's still going on. with this unemployment rate of 50%.
Es heißt, Deutsch zu sein,
What does it mean to be German?
enthaltet in sich ganz viel
It is made
Ressourcen zu haben.
of many various aspects, and one of these aspects are resources.
Diese Menschen migrieren,
And people migrate
weil die Zugang
because access to resources is something that they want to have too.
also von meiner Seite,
So from my side,
das war's.
that was it.
Ich übe.
Ich gucke auf die Uhr und übergebe ich das Wort jetzt, weil wir nicht.
Okay, now let me give the floor back to the panelists. I think the next step maybe is to accept questions, and this is a never-ending topic. The nice thing about this, about being German or not being German, to be considered German or not to be considered as German, even though we do not have the power, we can stir things up very much. And that is the power that we have. Because at the end of the day, I am German. I have the German passport and I was born here. Whether they like it or not, I look the way I look like. And that in itself is a provocation for many people. This is the provocation, and this is the terrible fear of the people who are currently steering the country in a way where across all the political spectra we see people repositioning themselves, and that in itself is already horrible. We are talking about other conditions, the majority, the exaggerated, and now it is also the legitimized fear that is also fomented by the media. We're talking about them and us, and we are a lot, and we are everywhere, every day, as much as we are kept busy. And we are also maybe something that made other people uncomfortable. We ourselves have internalized racism that we cannot get out of our heads. And this is something that we need to be aware of. We are continuously asked, where are you from? Where are you really from? Just as you, Stephanie, Laila, I often say I come from North Rhine-Westphalia, whether you like it or not. Full stop. This is something that we should really deal with very openly. And we can maybe steer things in a different direction, because we cannot get certain things out of people's minds. We also have the right to live here peacefully without being continuously disturbed. Even though some people who are living here by force, they don't really want to be here, but they have to be here. There are also other people who, like my biography, we are here and we can go elsewhere. But nobody will and should explain to us where we come from and where we should go. And because this is still something that is in our power, and we should definitely not explain things to people. And we are now currently at a time again where we see that maybe a little bit of provocation is necessary. My concluding words would go in the direction of saying that German, we should not say German but rather German and instead. The question that arises in me, which inevitably I do have a migration background, and it's not the background, it's actually a foreground. It's something I want to show and something I'm proud of. I really think that our existence of singing, dancing, and looking for German allies, people who are accompanying us on this path, we should hear their stories as well. We should think in an intersectional way and thus also feel maybe in an intersectional way, so that we can give more space to stories of exclusion. What I also think is important is really to laugh and smile, because many people don't want us to smile, and this is something that we should celebrate.
Und jetzt an euch.
And now to you, do you have questions? On this side? From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. You have highlighted so many aspects. It's why it is important to be German. It's a political statement for us. Because Germany consider itself as a white country. This is a political statement, really, to say black Afro-Germans, for instance, or people who have experienced racism. That is one aspect. Secondly, you have also explained that as Germans, you assume also responsibility for the political responsibility in Germany. We can only say, I experienced racism and I delegate this responsibility for what happened in the 90s, because I'm also benefit from the economic growth in Germany and from the way it has been also accumulated. I take responsibility for the situation, for what Germany is doing as well in the whole world. I have my share responsibility in it. On the other hand, I'm an Iranian, and as an Iranian woman, I'm also assume responsibility for what happened for the discrimination that people are experiencing, and from what is also happening in the industrial nations. And I want to speak up the way you did it as well. You have actually destroyed my economy, and we point to them, but at the same time, I assume responsibility as well for the discrimination and the violence that is actually taking place in my name in Iran or in Afghanistan. I cannot delegate this responsibility because I live here and I benefit from these privileges. So it's very important to actually to voice this, to use this category, and at the same time to take responsibility for the the privileges that is associated to this denomination. So I want to be a German, and as an Iranian, maybe if we had more time, we could enlarge on it, elaborate on it, and talk about the way we experience racism. Is this anything that is actually bringing us together? Either grounds, what you can be overcoming together in a collective attempt?
Also,
Merhaba, ben Zeynep Türkiye'den geliyorum.
My name is Seneb and I am from Turkey.
Türkiye'den
Okay, the panelists have to put on their headsets so that they can understand my intervention. I only here in Germany for about a year. I am exiled due to political reasons, just like the Turkish scientist who spoke earlier. The discussion on identity, which was the focus of this panel, it was very difficult for me to follow the discussion. Why do you talk so much about being German? I don't understand that. I am from Turkey and I see myself as Turkish. I was born in Turkey. My parents are Turkish. However, I call myself with Turkish descent because in Turkey, that is a big topic. Turkish identity is something that I reject because Turkish identity is full with horrible things that I reject. I'm not Turkish. I am somebody who comes from Turkey. The communities that are living in Turkey are the ones that I want to connect with. I am somebody from the Middle East. I'm not German and I don't intend to become German. I don't even intend to stay that long, but if I am a woman, then I am currently a woman who is living in Germany. Why do we necessarily want to be German if we don't look like German? Maybe I don't understand this because I am new. I don't understand why identity is so much at the heart of this discussion. This is what I don't understand.
Also ich habe euch
I've listened to you very carefully, and I've received new ways of thinking. It's a new experience, but I have some difficulties with it as well. I have some kind of belly ache, I would say. What shall I say? I've been living here in Germany for the past 70 years. I was born here, I grew up here, and I know all these isms that are available in life. And it was always a disturbing thing for me never to belong anywhere. When we started the movement about 23 years ago, it was the word Afro-German, and I could identify with it very easily. And this word, this concept, this self-definition has removed many obstacles in my life. Wherever you were, you had no answers, no answer. Sometimes I actually create stories, invent stories in order to be able to have my peace. And then came the expression Afro-German, and that was associated with the identity. I belong to a group of people, and it has an international dimension. And that was something particular. When I was asked, and I was welcoming the questions, I used this word in a very conscious way. And depending on the context, sometimes I would say Black Germans, and I observed the faces of the people, and I just left them with this expression. That was an act of resistance. I didn't have to explain to myself. And was Tuning said, we need to find new concepts, new expressions. You talked about something with citizens. It was reinventing citizenship. How do you understand that? How does it have to look like? I find it really difficult to use it practically. Of course, we can have a lot of theoretical decision about the way we want to define ourselves or not to define ourselves. But, on a day-to-day basis, things are different. We can't use all kinds of theoretical conceptions. But in your daily life, you're first shocked when something new is just confronting you. And this is why it is so important to have this concept of Afro-German or Black German, because it exactly is in tune with what I am. And when we show that, we don't have to give explanations. It is up to them to reflect and to think about the necessity to have these words. I find that I would like to have my self-definition. I want to give myself my own name. I want to express the way I belong to a group. And I think this kind of self-definition is more important than ever, because it's a step against discrimination. And if we don't do that, we'll have more problems. The times are not different. It was maybe more subtle before. And maybe the last one. German passports can't be removed, withdrawn. We experienced it in 1933, and the Roma people can tell a long story about it.
Wir haben genau 7 Minuten.
Now we have about 7 minutes for this discussion, and if we want to get the questions answered, then we have to start answering them now. Yeah, so is your question very brief? If you speak about identity, especially the identity of a group or people who are considered to be German with migration background and live here, what we should not forget is the other side, the Germans who do not have the experience. How do they deal with their identity? I've been living in Germany for the last 6 years. I've been working here in different jobs and also being at different universities. Now, what I've experienced is that the German society, without any migration experience, they themselves are very busy with their own identity. Now, the problem is when we sit here as migrants and speak only about our identity, as Germans who already belong to the second or third generation or even younger, and who are trying to become Germans, we should not only sit here and speak about our identity. What we should do is to look at the problem of identity from the other side. We need a space where we can have a dialogue with the so-called biological Germans, Germans who do not have the experience of migration, in order to find a common solution or a common identity. And that is, for me, very important. German with migration background, this is not a phrase that has been coined by the radicals, really. This is a term that has been coined by people who already experience in a democratic way some kind of integration, and who are also conducting a very socio-democratic immigration policy. We need to reach out to this target group in order to really have a dialogue. Otherwise, we will completely lose out.
I think we should start with the answers,
Schon zu Ende.
because our panel is already over. So we have the questions. The first question, Afro-German, I can answer with the new forms of citizenship. Then Seide asked about new forms of solidarity. So who would like to ask? Who would like to answer? I feel like answering. To begin with, I would like to thank you very much for all these contributions and for the critical analysis as well, because we are totally entitled to have different opinions, and they should be also expressed. We don't belong to the people who consider everybody the same with the so-called migrations background or foreground. We are entitled to have various different conversations as well among us. I consider myself as an Afro-German person, and I didn't say today. It's a nice expression, I find it. And before that, black sisters with a star also started this struggle and coined this concept. And I thought that this panel made it visible that none of us do not want to have a fixed definition. And I think this is the kind of margin of action that we should keep. We should remain flexible. We have really a full range of forms of oppressions. And I think the people who have experienced the highest level of oppression should be the one who have the power of definition. And this is very important to have an analysis of who has which privileges. It's very important to understand that in terms of class, age, gender, and all other forms of oppressions, they have to be taken into consideration. This is why I would like to advocate one ways of doing it. It's very important to acknowledge our various opinions, and everybody should have a space in this discussion.
Okay, let me try to give you quick answers or summarize a few things. It's absolutely excellent, that self-expression of Afro-German respect. Now, we from the Middle East, we don't have that kind of expression. The stories are very different and diverse. What you are saying is absolutely important. If somebody says, I'm a black German, then this might be a provocation for somebody to look at their own colonial and post-colonial history. We are children from previous so-called foreigners, the Kanaken, and we have a different story and history, not to distinguish ourselves from them, but from others. It's just to say it's different, and we need to still have a long analysis with regard to how we position ourselves politically. We are also people from Turkey, not necessarily Turkish. And the discussion here is not that we are saying that we want to be German. What we want to have is a discussion. What we've seen with this wave coming from Turkey, we are also being pigeonholed. The term Turkey is a term that has been used here in Germany also for a very long time. We are not the conventional Almanjers from way back. We are citizens of the world, and we are happy that more and more people are coming here, and we can tell many stories, and I think the newcomers will be moved by our stories. What we don't need is if people trying to lecture each other on terms and also their way of understanding. None of us here in this room probably thinks that being German is absolutely important, but when it comes to society, we need to take a stance and take on a position. There are many moments in my daily life where I need to write that I am German, whether you like it or not. And this is not an ethnic belongingness or affiliation. It's indeed a provocative position in order to steer things up. In this time or at this time, I think what we should do is to listen to each other and not really analyze things too quickly and reduce them there. Saida, you spoke about new alliances and experiences of racism. How can this be bundled now? People from Turkey and also people who have migrated from the Middle East, they too maybe can relate to these kind of experiences. We have suffered a lot, and I think that what our parents have gone through, this can also steer things up in the current debate.
Well, now I'm going to do as well through the questions quickly. Why is this issue of identity very important? It doesn't have to be important. It's important to certain people, and to other people, it's not important at all. We talked about it because in this context where we find ourselves, it's relevant. When we talk about Afro-Germans and new forms of citizenship, I would say that each generation has to redefine these words that we use and have to confront itself with these wordings. I consider myself as a person from Africa, and very often when I'm together with other people who identify themselves as Afro-Germans, they don't see myself as part of this community. And each generation, as I said, there's some kind of negotiation that has to take place. Who belongs all these words? To whom all these words belong? And there's a lot of reflection that has to be done. And I've said it based on the experience that I have and after giving many thoughts to this issue. How is it possible to negotiate this identity with the Germans? We have been doing that for the past 500 years, and we just carry on. It's a very good task that we've taken over, and we are doing our part. And the last question about this idea of coalitions and solidarity movement is very important to have in each of our communities this kind of approach full of love and full of respect in order to have an idea of the kinds of and the forms of discriminations that is taking place on a daily basis. We have to identify them. We have to actually do our own duties, to perform our own duties. It's very important to have a look at what is happening in our communities. It has to be a transparent approach. It has to be an approach full of love in order to be able to forge these coalitions. That would be genuine coalitions, but it has to be as well under the umbrella of a non-violent approach. People who are queer, who are looking different than us, we have the same kind of access to the same kind of information of mainstream society. So we have to look into our own communities and look at the way the trans community is doing and to be honest with what we still have to do. I would like to give an answer to that one.
The term Afro-German, we use that. Audre Lorde, basically, I don't remember a certain word, but it doesn't matter. Audre Lorde said that we are Bindestrich Menschen, but the term Afrodeutsch was basically moved by people who are living here. In my first conferences that I attend, I said something very bad. I said, what do I have to do with Africa? And I learned very quickly that I have to do with Africa a lot. And we carried out discussions, and this is the reason why we consciously chose the term Black people in Germany, and we were very much convinced that we are connected to the people in Africa. And thank you very much for having done that, because that's absolutely amazing. Okay, so we're done because we have to make the way for the next panel, and we are also tired, to be honest. Thank you very much.